recording is there, yeah? All right. It's the down button. All right, I'll do a quick intro. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you as well to our virtual audience who are here with us today. Welcome to the Good Place Pavilion by ExpoLive. My name is Yasmin, and I'm a great privilege of overseeing many of the projects, including AgUnity, which we'll hear from in just a moment, over the last 5 years since the launch of the ExpoLive program. At ExpoLive, we believe that innovation can come from anywhere to everyone. A journey that started around 5 years ago now takes the center stage here at the World Expo, and we are delighted and proud to be able to present to you the stories of our global innovators and to highlight the impact that they've been able to deliver on the ground as a result of their great innovative work. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, David, who will be taking us through AgUnity, a project based in Australia. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yasmin. Hi, everyone. I'm David Davies, and I'm the founder of AgUnity. And what we do is really simple. We take low-cost smartphones and we transform them to be a useful and relevant tool for the very poorest low-income farmers in developing nations. All these farmers that you see here before have increased their income, have been able to access a marketplace for goods and services, be able to get finance probably for the first time in their lives, and that's all thanks to having AgUnity phones. But why is this such an important problem? I want to run around. A lot of people are concerned about how do we feed the world in 2050? Well, there's a really interesting fact there. There's about 570 million farmers in the world, but 500 million of them are very small smallholder farmers, most of them earning just a couple of dollars a day. Those are the ones that we focus on. Whereas most other technologies focus on that 70 million that are the larger scale farmers, because they're much easier to deal with. There's two things you can notice about these really small whole scalers. They're typically very inefficient. A lot of what they produce goes to waste. A lot of times they just don't get paid properly, and a lot of food doesn't arrive in the right places. So the things AgUnity does is mainly improve their efficiency, make sure all their food actually gets to someone who will eat it, and make sure they get a fair price for that food. The solution is also really simple. We take smartphones and we make them work for people who may have low literacy. So we use big geometric shapes and primary colors. We make them work in areas where there's no connectivity. And we also record all the transactions on the blockchain so that the farmers know that when I've handed over my cocoa beans or coffee, or when I get paid for something, no one's going to come back later and cheat me for that, because trust and cooperation is such an important aspect of getting collaboration in these areas. And we've been doing all this all over the world now. I'm really proud to say that the Expo Project was in Papua New Guinea, which is right over here, and it was our second project. And thanks to the Expo Project, we now have 6 projects running in Papua New Guinea. And it all came from that one. And then those farmers hear about it. And now we're doing a vanilla project and then a coffee project. And that's how it grows in all the countries around the world. So we've got now multiple projects, and we've grown substantially since we first met the Expo program. And they were a big part of making that success. We've put together a really great management team because we have a very wide discipline that we need to do. We need to build great technology. And even though it's a simple solution, it needs to be built for millions of farmers. So you need to build enterprise scale technology. But we also need people from a farming background. We have people that have done multi-$100 million agricultural projects in Australia. We've also got people that come from NGO and development backgrounds, because the other thing we need to do our job properly is go out into the field and work with the farmers to understand what their real problems are, what their real needs are. And so in the last few years, we've grown to over 50 people across 19 countries. And one of the things I'm most proud that happened during COVID is we learned to hire people locally actually for a lot less cost than flying people around the world. And I'm really proud to say that we're providing really good employment for people in 19 countries now. We work with a lot of really big organisations, ranging from NGOs to financial institutions and also commodity buyers like Fairtrade International. This is going back to that problem. Why is AgUnity doing something unique? There's lots of organisations that produce solutions for large commercial farms that are used to technology, and those farmers are wealthy and educated, and they typically have things like bank accounts, so they can pay for a solution really easy. We don't have that luxury in the market we're dealing with. Most of our farmers have never owned a phone before. They have low literacy, so we have to deal with things that they don't understand. And also, it's really hard for them to pay. So we had to work out business models and structures that work around those challenges. And it's taken us a long time, but we have achieved that. So this is Papua New Guinea, where we ran the project. 82% of Papua New Guinea's 10 million citizens depend on agriculture and fishing for a living. The AgUnity solution, as we're spreading out towards everything, can become the most, possibly the most popularly used application in the whole of Papua New Guinea. And we're hoping we go to even bigger countries in the future, like Ethiopia and Kenya, and this just becomes a standard platform for all farmers and potentially the main application that everyone in the country has. And this is the Melan Cooperative. These are all the farmers, many of them showing their AgUnity phones. We've benefited from the ExpoLive program, 100 farmers, but that's growing already and it's spreading to other regions. So it's a great example that when you do start something like this, it grows on further. The total number of cocoa farms is 150,000. So we'll be able to eventually, I think, reach most of those across Papua New Guinea, because in some cases, we've seen the cocoa farmers increase their income by 3 times in a single season. And that's not by taking money from anyone, that's by reducing waste and making sure they get a fair price for it. And this is something new that happened just in the last year. We've been able to improve the farmers' efficiency. We've been able to get them to cooperate and operate together. But there was one problem that we couldn't solve, and this has been really bothering me. And it's best demonstrated by coffee. We all pay about $2, $3 for a cup of coffee. In some countries, we might be paying $5 or $6. How much does a farmer get? It's about 7 cents. It didn't used to be like that. If we go back 30 years, the farmer was getting more like 10 to 15% of what we paid for a cup of coffee. But what's happened is the supply chains have squeezed it. We pay more through the retailers and they've kept the farmers oppressed. So we were thinking, how can we solve this really, really big challenge about fair prices in coffee, cacao, vanilla, tea, all these products that come mostly from impoverished developing nation farmers. They get sent to the developed world. We pay a lot for them and they're still getting pittance and living in abject poverty. But on the other hand, we deal with a lot of the big commodity buyers, and some of them are in the news all the time because people look at them and they go, oh, you've got child slavery in your supply chain, or you're not paying farmers fairly. Now, I used to think they were big, bad, evil companies, and I've worked in big, bad, evil companies in the past, so I know what I'm talking about. But actually, when you understand it, they don't have any connection to the farmers. The really big coffee companies that you know that are in the bad press for not being fair to farmers, they can't really fix the problem. Because if they pay more for their coffee, the suppliers are just going to take it. It doesn't improve the life of the farmers, and very little of excess money gets back to farmers. Now, we work extensively with Fairtrade, who is the best organisation for doing this in the world, in my belief. And they managed to get about 1/3 or 1/4 of the extra price back to the farmers. So we created a system that's much better. It's the Aggregate reward system. This is a digital token, and we went to extensive effort to make sure this is well regulated and it's a very safe space. You can buy $1 of Aggregate and you can send it to one of hundreds of farmers, including the 100 or so in Melan in New Guinea, and they will receive 100% of that. So it's direct giving, goes into their wallet, and they can immediately use it to pay off their phone, to buy a solar kit, to buy fertilizer for the farm, exactly like they currently receive the things. What's so important about this is the ethical coffee companies can put a bit of Aggregate on a card in the bag, and the person who buys the coffee, can release that to the farmer. The person can also contribute and do that as well. So we've got direct giving with no loss and the ability to see that farmer that grew your chocolate or coffee. This is only possible because we had this big group of farmers that are already using AgUnity. They've already got the technical network, the money's already flowing around, so we could introduce a digital token straight into that system. It would be pointless trying to give them digital tokens if they couldn't do anything with it, right? So what AgUnity does, and the market, the future for us, we think is really big. Those 500 million smallholder farmers currently produce $2 trillion worth of commodities that come into the developed world, things like coffee, tea, vanilla, and other crops. But as I said, I think they do that at about half efficiency at the moment. I think that number could be $5 trillion or more if we help those farmers become more efficient. They also buy about $1 trillion worth of products. They get 200 billion of foreign aid, and they're a potential market for about $1.5 trillion of financial services, which they're currently not doing. Most of our farmers never had a bank account. They don't use insurance. They don't use any of those things. What AgUnity is doing is trying to plug that gap, because at the moment, all these money flows to them, so much just falls through the gap. We take the loss out of that system and make sure that when a commodity is paid for, the farmer is getting as much of it as they can. When they buy a product, they're not paying 2 times the price for a solar kit or fertilizer that they need to, because there's really no need in this modern age, just because a farmer lives in a remote village, they should be paying twice as much as a developed farmer should. So that's what AgUnity is really trying to do. If we do that, AgUnity's been growing. We've been growing extremely well since this. The commodity buyers will be able to increase their market, get access to more farmers, and improve the quality of the crops that they're buying. We get better coffee coming into our world because they can communicate with the farmers and say, no, don't do this, do that. Products and service providers, like people that sell solar kits, fertilizers and supplements, currently they sell nothing to most of those 500 million farmers because it's too hard to sell to them, it's too hard to collect it. If they put things into their markets, they don't really know it's going to come back, so they don't focus on them. So we're opening up a new market of 500 million people to a whole lot of companies. As we develop the Aggregate system, we let retail consumers buy with confidence and trust that they know that the farmers are being treated fairly and that their children are going to school and not working on the farm and that there's no slavery involved. But most importantly, if we do this right, thousands of farmers like Frida here are going to be lifted out of poverty and improve their lifestyle and improve their income. And so that's the overall mission of AgUnity. Thank you very much for listening to me. And we can pass it over to questions now if there's still time.
Thank you so much, David, for taking us through that. I think it's a really impressive project, and it's nice to be able to see the faces of the beneficiaries in your presentation as well. I think that kind of brings it back home to ExpoLive at least. And as you said, yes, do we have any questions from the audience?
Yes, hello. I want to ask in general for you as a company entrepreneur, how will you gain, because it's all about money at the end, how will you benefit from it for yourself as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and we get it all the time. We actually have a complicated business model. What we're really doing is we're trying to create a market out of people that currently are invisible to most of the world. You know what? Our business is really a bit like eBay. Like what we mostly make the money from is when those farmers buy a solar kit or get a microloan from a bank or something like that. But before we do that, we have to get them onto the platform. We have to get them earning a bit more money, and we have to give them access to those products and services that can improve their lives. So we do a lot of groundwork. And fortunately, we rely on organizations like Expo and USAID and the World Food Programme to help us get into the countries, because we could never have got into many of our countries if an organisation didn't help us start that, get phones out to a couple of hundred farmers. Those farmers think it's an awesome system, and people come from villages from miles away asking if they can join it next. So we need that sort of bootstrapping to get started. Then we start the project, improve the lives of those farmers, and when those farmers are earning more money, and when they now have access to things like banking, finance, commodities, we can make money from them. So it's kind of a long play, but it's also a very reliable one, because all these farmers, we're essentially the only system that they use to buy a solar kit or to connect to a bank account. So we have a very, very captive market.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? I have one, a very straightforward one, and one that we like to have answered a lot at Expo Live, and one that taps into the kind of inspirational angle. But I guess my question is, what led you to found this organization? How did you come across this as an issue, and pushed you to take on something that's relatively risky? And
I'd like to say we had this great altruistic vision, but that's a complete lie. It was an accident. And the story is really wonderful. We were working on another blockchain technology. I just sold a company in Singapore, and one of the other founders had gone to a conference in London, and he's living in China at the time. He turned up to the conference, bags in hand, direct off a flight, and he found out there was a hackathon on the weekend. And the theme of the hackathon was fintech to good. But what was so important was there was a prize from Singularity University. And I have great respect for Singularity University. They have a really good mantra: don't do something for 1 million people if you can do it for 1 billion. And so we just wanted to win the prize. We weren't trying to change the world. We weren't doing anything. We just wanted to win that prize. And so we tried to come up with a genuine idea that can improve the lives of 1 billion people. We presented it, and then fortunately, Costa Peric from Gates Foundation was there. He runs financial services to the poor, and he beelined straight up to John, and he said, look, we see this problem all over the world. We think you've just nailed it. We really want you to take it seriously. Come to us if you need help. Turns out 6 years later, I think we're going to get our first actual grant from Gates Foundation. They're very hard to get money out of, but they're certainly big with the encouragement. And then we circulated it around other NGOs like Asia Development Bank, and we found, hang on, we're onto something that is a real gap in the market. And that's when we decided to stop this other project that we'd already spent a lot of money on and focus on doing something very important for the biggest group demographic. 500 million farmers support a population of their families and their villages and the people in their supply chain. That number is 3.1 billion people. That's 40% of the world depend on people like the ones you're looking at here. And mostly they get ignored because they're too hard to reach, they're too hard to give products and services to, and most importantly, it's very difficult to get paid from them. And so that's what we see our role is, to just leveling the playing field. So they're not the forgotten people anymore. They're benefiting from all the other systems that we get.
we have time for one more question.
Thank you, David, for the great presentation. And interesting that this started by mistake, but sometimes the best things do. So my question is, earlier, a few days ago, you had mentioned that hopefully one of your intentions is that the AgUnity phone will actually be, it's something that the farmers could go and purchase themselves, and it'll just kind of be widely accessible. When the time comes for that to happen, will you be producing your own AgUnity phones, or will it still be changing the existing?
We've gone through a couple of phone manufacturers so far. We've got one that we really like. I'm going to do a blatant plug here. I think Blackview, which is a very unknown phone, they make waterproof phone, incredible company and really ethical. And so we've had good discussions with them. And when we hit about 10,000 phones in one order, they'll make them out of the factory. So they come in the box or AgUnity. We don't have to do any work for it. The farmer gets it, takes it out of the box and goes to their cooperative and says who they are. So we hope to get to that situation by next year. And then after that, we'll have other models of phones. So we don't see ourselves as being a phone supplier, but we had to do that to bootstrap this system. So we'll evolve on from that in the future, and we'll probably have more limited downloadable versions of the app. But you can't do everything that our phones currently do via a downloadable app because of the restrictions on Play Store. So the phones that we supply are much better, but we will have a downloadable version of our next funding round. And hopefully there'll be a lot of different, hopefully in Ethiopia, for example, you'll be able to go in the store and you'll be able to choose 3 different models of phones that are, you'll be able to get normal Android phones and 3 or 4 different models of AgUnity phones once we get to the right volume.
But it wouldn't reduce your cost, as in the price of the phone that the farmer would be purchasing it for. It wouldn't be reduced if you were to manufacture your own.
Yeah, it'll probably remain about the same, because at the moment we make no profit on the phones. It's not really what we do, and we don't want to prejudice the partners and things by making money on the phones. But when they go in shops, the retailers, they will be making profit. So it probably won't affect the farmers' pricing too much, but it'll just mean they're available everywhere. And when a farmer's in another village realize it, they just go into the store and get a phone and set it up and it's all ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the questions, and thank you, David. Once again, I think you've shown the true essence of what it means to be a social entrepreneur, which involves a lot of risk, a lot of being at the right place at the right time, or maybe in your case with the hackathon, being at enough places or as many places as possible and as much of the time as possible. So thank you very much. Another round of applause. And that's the final Meet the Innovator session for Food, Agriculture and Livelihood Week. But we do have a panel discussion happening at 4 p.m. here, where we'll discuss innovations that reduce food waste. So if you're around, please join us. Thank you. Feel free to go.
Oh, yes.